Greetings and thank you, Dana. Today we're going to be talking about double hop transitions from Exchange 2003 to 2010 to 2013. Now, if that makes you groan a little bit inside, well, that's okay. That's what we expected. And so not to worry. We're going to try to take some of the edge off of this by the end of the lesson. So don't worry too much about all of that. But I know when you're looking at it, it might be a little intimidating to start. Let's tell you a little bit about me first, because I know that's what you're dying to hear about. So let me give you the modest bio of J. Peter Brzezzi. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Exchange. I have a variety of different certifications, as you can see there. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, a technical author with over a dozen books that have been sold internationally to my credit. I'm also a technical speaker for conferences like Tech Mentor, Tech Ed, MEC, the Microsoft Exchange Conference, Connections, and others. I'm also a journalist for InfoWorld. I write the Enterprise Windows column. So in my spare time, well, let's just be honest, if you look at all this, I have no spare time. This is what I do 24/7. I'd like a career in country music, but apparently that's not going to happen. I'm not a great singer, and so I'm going to stick with this. And as you can see, I'm pretty busy with it. It's all really revolving around the world of Exchange, and most recently, of course, Exchange 2013 has hit the scene. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about some of the new features. In fact, let's take a look at the agenda. We're going to talk about what's new in Exchange 2013. What do you need to begin focusing on to migrate from 2003 to 2010? And then what will you need to do post-2010 to get you ready for the move to 2013? So I see I have about 75 attendees at this point. Let me just ask, show of hands, how many of you are still using Exchange 2003 in your environments? Okay, I know some of you raised your hands. I know you did. Keep in mind, I can't see you. So if you did, that's okay. That's a bit of a webinar joke I like to use. The fact of the matter is that there are a lot of folks still using 2003, but as you're going to find in this discussion, there is no transition path from 2003 to 2013. And so what that means is you're going to have to do a double hop transition. So we'll talk about that. It's a little stressful, but not as much as you think. So let's start with the top. Let's talk about what's new in Exchange 2013. So we're looking at new features in Exchange 2013, and some of these features may be compelling. Some of them may not be. And what I mean by compelling is if you're already on a flavor of Exchange like Exchange 2010, or maybe you're on 2003 and you're going to have to make this double hop. So you're going to have to move first to 2010. And so now you're on 2010. Are the features in Exchange 2013 compelling enough to make you want to make that second hop? You know, I mean, think about it. If you were going to, to go to a solution like 2013 and you have to go through all this effort to first hop once to 2010, is there enough in terms of new features to make you go through the same stress of making that second hop? Well, let's find out. So here are some of the new features in Exchange 2013. And I'm going to be pretty candid, pretty honest with you as far as my take on some of these new features. So the first one is there's a new Exchange Administration Center, an EAC they call it. And this is a web-based console. So it's not like your Exchange Management Console, or even your system attendants that are MMC based. Rather, this is a whole web-based console. Now, I'll be honest with you, when I first saw this thing, I hated it. And I told the Exchange team I did when I was at the MVP Summit. I said, look, I hate this thing. It makes me feel like I'm working with SharePoint or something, as far as the web-based side. So I'm not a fan. But, over the last year, it's really won me over. And I'll tell you why. One of the frustrations with the MMC consoles is that they have to be installed on whatever system you're working on, whether it's a client system or on the server itself. And so you have to literally, be sitting at that system to work with it. And that, sort of creates some issues when you're moving around as an admin. The new EAC, however, is a web-based console, and as such, you can get to it through any web browser that it's supported. So that's a really great feature. Now, it is using the Metro interface. I know we're not supposed to call it Metro any longer because apparently the German Walmart, I don't know if they call it Walmart, but the German version of Walmart threatened to sue Microsoft over the use of the word Metro for their design element. I don't know how they can get away with that, and I don't know why Microsoft backed down, but apparently we're not supposed to call the design Metro any longer. Nevertheless, they're not going to sue me, so I'll call it Metro all I want, and that's the interface that's being used. So this new Metro interface that's used for Office 2013 and all the websites themselves and so forth, that's part of the new Exchange Administration Center, and I didn't like it. But I will say that being able to access it from anywhere, and also the new flow of things in the new EAC as far as how things are established, is a tremendous improvement over the EMC. So that's a win. Is it enough? Is it compelling enough for me to want to move to 2013? No, not for me. But it's at least something that's different and new and does work well. The other feature that's new is there's a whole new Exchange architecture. And so for those of you who are still working with Exchange 2003, perhaps you've deployed Exchange using the whole front-end, back-end concept in your design. So you've got your front-end servers that handle client connectivity, like your Outlook web app connections, your Outlook Anywhere connections, and so forth. And then you have your back-end mailbox servers. Okay, so that design changed with 2007 and 2010. And so then we had these 5 server roles. Really 4. One of those server roles is sitting out on the perimeter. It's the Edge Transport Server. It's not really considered, part of the core server roles. But you have these 4 server core excuse me there a minute. So then you have these 4 core server roles, and you have the CAS server, the client access. You have the unified messaging, the hub transport, and the mailbox. Unified messaging might not be considered core when you're looking at 2007 or 2010. All right, so how has this changed? Well, with Exchange 2013, we now have just 2 server roles on the interior side of the network, on the internal network. We have the client access server role, and we have the mailbox server role. And so that's something that is now a big change. Now, what happened to all the other roles? Well, there is no Edge Transport Server role for Exchange 2013. If you like using the Edge, you can stick with your Edge 2010 out on the perimeter. Or you can go with some third-party solution, some web-based solution for your anti-spam and antivirus and so forth. That's what a lot of folks are doing anyway. Then you've got your mailbox server role that has actually integrated into it most of the hub transport server role features and the unified messaging server role. So when you go to do an installation, you no longer choose if you want installed or not. Now that's not a problem, because essentially the role, if it's not utilized, it's a service, it's a set of services. So if you don't use unified messaging, it just kind of sits there. It doesn't really impact your server in any way. And if you do want to use it, it's already installed. So that's the new Exchange architecture. There's also been improvements in policy and compliance, anti-malware. There's actually a new anti-malware GUI interface. It doesn't provide a tremendously robust version of anti-malware. There's no quarantine. It's missing a lot of features, but it is there. It's something we didn't have before that's now built in. There have been tremendous improvements in terms of compliance when it comes to e-discovery. If you've worked with earlier versions, especially if you're working with 2003, the improvements from 2003 forward are just off the charts. From 2010 to 2013, there have been improvements when it comes to the multi-mailbox search to provide better e-discovery, improvements in terms of various rules and the managed resources. So we do see that. There's also a new managed store. So the information store has been completely rewritten in C#, and that's nice. On the one hand, the positive side to that is that now every process that when you spin up a new database, every database gets its own process in Task Manager. So if one process fails, it doesn't take out all of your databases. So that's a plus. On the negative side, you can only mount 50 databases with Exchange 2013. With 2010, you could mount 100 per server. So that's a huge difference, and it's because of this new managed store. So that's something to consider if you're actually listening and you have a large-scale deployment where you have Exchange with over 50 mailbox databases mounted. This is going to be a bit of a challenge in terms of the number of servers you'll need, because you have to keep it to 50 or under with 2013. Modern public folders. They've made a change. Public folders no longer require a public folder database. Now you can have you can use your mailbox databases, and you create a public folder mailbox, and then in there you put your public folders. As far as the end user is concerned, it looks the same. It looks like public folders. As far as you're concerned, you no longer need to worry about the public folder database. That's a plus. On the plus side, you have the ability to, because it's part of the mailbox server now, as far as the mailbox database, you have the ability to turn around and make that part of your high availability structure. On the negative side, you used to be able to have replicas where you could have a replica of your data closer to users. So if you have a user in, let's say, Fiji, and you have users that are in Paris, France, you could put public folders closer to where your end users are. Unfortunately, that's not the case any longer, because now the public folder mailbox resides on a specific mailbox server. So you can see how that could be a problem in terms of if you do require this replica of public folders to be closer to your end users, that's not going to be possible here with this structure. You'll have to come up with another more creative method, perhaps even duplicates of the same data to have public folders closer with the public folder mailbox. So some changes, some may be compelling to a certain degree, but perhaps in other ways not so much, and that's something that you're going to have to decide. Either way, though, if you're on Exchange 2003, support's ending here, so you've got to make a move. And you can't make a move directly to 2013. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So a move to 2010 is your first hop. So regardless of whether or not the features here are compelling enough to make the second part of it, the fact is that you should start thinking about making that first hop now. As far as additional features, there are lots of PowerShell commandlets that have been added. And maybe you're sitting there thinking, I hate PowerShell, so more PowerShell commandlets, great. That's not compelling for me. But a lot of us have come to really appreciate it and even embrace PowerShell. We find the value in it. And so having more commandlets gives you more control. There's another set of transport rules called data loss prevention. This is interesting. It's not groundbreakingly new, but it's new for Exchange. You have the ability now to go in and you can create a template or choose a template for existing compliance rules that exist, like the Patriot Act, let's say. And so what we found is that a lot of folks, when they're emailing, perhaps they're not thinking, they email things that are pretty sensitive in terms of social security numbers, credit card numbers, and so forth. And so to let people put this out on the wire, put this out in emails, may not be the smartest thing for your company. So how do you prevent them from doing that? Well, training is always good. It's always good to train your end users, tell them not to do that, and that would be really the best line of defense. In any company, the best line of defense is to train your end users. But in addition, you can establish rules that will help them after their training is in place. So a data loss prevention transport rule is really a nice feature in Exchange 2013. It enables you to quickly and easily choose the set of compliance rules that you're looking to work with. Like I said, the Patriot Act might be one of them. And then you can tweak those rules in order to apply them. Perhaps you want to give the end user a message to say, hey, be careful, a mail tip, so to speak, that says, hey, be careful, don't send this information. Or perhaps you simply want to stop them from sending that information. So that's the value of data loss prevention. There have been Outlook web app enhancements, as there always are. On the plus side, the enhancements certainly give us a much more robust Outlook web app. On the negative side, it gives us that Metro interface, which we can't seem to avoid, whether we're working with Office 2013 or SharePoint 2013, everything's Metro. So if you're a Metro fan, then hey, this is great. These enhancements are great. But if you're not, then it might be a little hard on the eyes. I personally find the Metro interface, especially in the Office products, to give me a little too much white space, and I feel like I'm blinded all the time. So that's my complaint. As we mentioned, there's built-in anti-malware with Exchange 2013, and there have been additional improvements to high availability. A few different design enhancements in terms of being able to have even automatic failover of high availability between sites. As you may or may not know, with the current database availability group structure, you can fail over from server to server in the same site, but when you lose quorum in one site and you're looking to fail over to another site, let's say a secondary data center where you're ready to have everything moved over, the problem is you have to manually intervene. And so that's called a switchover. And so with the new high availability improvements, there is a design model where you can have an automatic failover. It's a bit complex, and I haven't actually seen it work just yet, but keep in mind, all of this is pretty new. Now I know that Exchange 2013 was released a few months back and it went general availability and it's out there in the wild. But we're still looking at new deployments of it. Currently you can only do a greenfield deployment of Exchange 2013. We can't even transition at this point. Even today as I'm speaking to you, there is no way to transition from 2010 to 2013 or 2007, and there will never be a way from 2003. You'll have to get a third-party tool, or you'll have to do the double hop transition. So we're going to talk about that. But ultimately, Exchange 2013 is still pretty new out of the box, and so we're hoping to get more information as time goes by. And as we get this information, TrainSignal will no doubt have additional webinars and webcasts that, as we go forward, to give you that information when it goes live. So let's just focus in on this for a second. What stops your move to 2013? Well, it might be this. The stop might be that you're not really compelled to move towards it. In your mind, after hearing those features, and there are other features, but those are some of the higher end ones. If that doesn't float your boat, if that doesn't make you go, hey, I really can't wait to get onto this, that's okay. Every release can't be a home run. And so in this case, Exchange 2013 has some features that they just may not be compelling enough to move you from 2010 over. It's a work in progress. So let's look at some of the other options here. Exchange 2003, if that's what you're on, if you raised your hand when I asked the question, there is no upgrade path. And currently there's no third-party solution yet. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, Pete, maybe you just need to talk to the folks over at Quest. Because they always come up with some kind of migration solution. That's true. And I have talked to the folks at Quest, in fact, just a couple of weeks back. And they're working on it. Folks, they are working on it. But currently, they have no way to make it work. So that's a problem. They're still kind of stumped. So we'll see what they come up with. I have no doubt they'll figure it out. And I have no doubt that they'll charge for it, too. I mean, if you've worked with Quest tools, they're not cheap. Quest has not become the monumental company that was just purchased by Dell for no reason. They charge for their tools. They make great tools, and they charge for them. So there'll be a cost involved. Perhaps it's more cost-effective for you to move to 2010 and do a double hop transition than to purchase a third-party solution. Totally up to you. Then we have Exchange 2007. This requires release update 8, which isn't released yet. So there's no way to test this just yet. We're waiting for release update 8, and it hasn't been released. Then Exchange 2010. This requires Service Pack 3. Now you'll note it says here on the slide, which isn't released yet. Actually, just last week they released this. So that's good news. Great. So now you're thinking, oh, that's wonderful. So now I can go from Service Pack 3. With Service Pack 3, I can now go from Exchange 2010 to 2013. Wonderful. No, that's not true. Somehow or another, the rules changed, and there's some discrepancy on this. But we were originally told, at least this is what most of us believe, we were told that once we have Service Pack 3 for Exchange 2010, we're going to be good to go. We'll be able to transition to Exchange 2013. Then they released Service Pack 3, and they told us that we can't move to 2013 until we get the cumulative update for Exchange 2013, which hasn't been released yet. So, this is, some may even ask the question, why did they even release this? Why did they release Exchange 2013 when they didn't have all of these other pieces in place? And look, I can't honestly say, what was happening behind the scenes. There's some guessing, and there is some commentary going on, in various blog posts and so forth, that the Exchange team was forced to push this out the door because SharePoint 2013, Link 2013, Office 2013, Server 2012 was released in September. So it was like, look, get this out the door. And so they did. And here's where we are. So Exchange 2013 was done, but not quite, fully baked. Things like the managed store, obviously cutting things down from 100 databases to 50, that's a problem. Some of the issues that we've seen, if you look in the forums, problems that folks are having with it, these are concerns. The fact that we don't have these, the release update or the Service Pack 3, these are concerns. But this is what happens when sometimes things get pushed out the door instead of being released naturally. So that's what's stopping your move to 2013. Unless you're sitting out there and you're listening to this and saying, well, look, I just have a greenfield deployment. I've got a brand new company, 100 users, 200 users. They want an in-house on-premise Exchange server. I haven't been able to talk them into Office 365. No, they want an on-premise Exchange no matter how much I tell them how awesome Office 365 is. In those cases, then you can deploy Exchange 2013. It's greenfield. There's no pre-existing Exchange environment. If you're coming over from Lotus or some other solution, actually Quest does have migration tools for that. So you can easily you can actually move over from Exchange to Exchange 2013 because again, that's a greenfield deployment too. You're not transitioning, you're migrating, and there are tools to help you do that. So lots to consider here. As I'm talking here, I see that a question has come in. The question is, can you discuss antivirus for Exchange, and do I have a favorite? It's a good question. So as far as antivirus for Exchange, the built-in antivirus solution is really a version 1.0. It's bare minimum. The anti-spam agents are also still included. The only negative here is that if you've worked with the anti-spam before, then you know that you configure it on your Edge Transport server. There's a tab for that. You can configure the different, there's 9 different agents you can configure. But if you didn't want to use an Edge Transport server, with Exchange 2010, you could enable the anti-spam agents through a PowerShell commandlet, or script rather, and you can run the script and it enables the agents, and then you can manage them through the GUI. So what's changed with 2013 is that if you want to enable the anti-spam agents on the mailbox server, which as I said already assumes most of the role of the hub transport server, so it's kind of a one-to-one, then you can install those agents. But the negative is that you cannot manage those agents through the GUI. You still have to use PowerShell in order to manage those, and so that kind of stinks, to be honest with you. For there not to be a GUI method for managing your own anti-spam agents is a little frustrating. But as far as antivirus for Exchange, personally, I think there are a lot of good solutions out there. There's no one that I point to as being my favorite. I like solutions that are kind of all-in-ones. I like solutions like Mimecast is a good solution. It's an all-in-one. It gives you archive. It gives you a redundancy when things go down. If you lose your whole environment, you can still email through Mimecast. It gives you e-discovery. It gives you anti-spam, antivirus. So I like universal solutions like that when it comes to the Edge. Very good. Another question. Is cumulative update expected soon? Sure, I'll be honest with you, everything is expected soon. It was expected with the release of Service Pack 3. That would have made sense. I don't have a date on cumulative update 1, but obviously it's expected soon. So who knows, maybe today they'll release it just as I'm talking about this, and they'll say, we'll get that going. One last question before we move forward. What are the differences in DAGs between 2010 and 2013? So there's actually quite a bit in terms of the nitty-gritty things that have changed in DAGs. There is a 3-part article from Scott Schnoll. There's 3 parts to it. You can do a quick search. I think it was released through the Microsoft Exchange team blog, but he really digs in on what changes have been made in terms of the active manager, best copy selection, and so forth. However, that being said, let's take it back to a higher level here. If you remember the change from 2007 to 2010, right, or even 2003 to 2007, let's go back a little further. There's a big change with 2003 to 2007 because now they introduced smaller transaction logs for the sake of continuous replication. And then in 2007, there were all these different continuous replication options. We had local continuous, cluster continuous, standby continuous with Service Pack 1. Now, granted, some would say that really only one of these was a high availability solution, the cluster continuous replication. And that's fine. We can debate that all day long. But the fact is you had all of these different continuous replication options. Then in 2010, they threw all that out. Well, not really. They just threw out a lot of the names. They came up with the name Database Availability Group. It still uses continuous replication in order to make everything happen. But now it's all under one roof. So you went from having to know 3 or 4 different solutions to now only having to know one. And with that one DAG solution, you started learning all the rules of creating a DAG. So here's the good news. Between 2010 and 2013, most of those rules, in fact, nearly all of them, are the same. Okay, so from a surface level perspective, everything's the same. You create a database availability group, you put your member servers in it, you determine which systems will have the passive copies of the active database, you can create lagged copies, all the same. So hopefully that puts your mind at ease. As far as enhancements, a lot of the enhancements are under the hood. They're nitty-gritty things that if you really want to study up on them, those articles from Scott are really the best way to go. All right, let's move forward. So moving to Exchange 2013. If you're looking at Exchange 2003, you're going to do a double hop. You're going to do a double hop to 2010 first and then 2013. Now, here's the thing. If you want, you can also hop from 2010 to 2007 to 2000. I mean, rather, you can hop from 2003 to 2007 to 2013. You can do that. But why? There's no point in doing that way. Your better bet is going from 2003 to 2010 to 2013. Now, if you're on Exchange 2007 with RU8 and Exchange 2010 with SP3, you can do the following. This is how you actually make the move. And we're not going to go into every last little detail. But you upgrade your Active Directory schema. You install an Exchange 2013 system in the environment. Or if you're moving to 2010, you would install a 2010 system. Make sure certificates are set up. You move over namespaces to the new CAS. You move over your mailboxes, and then you discontinue legacy servers. It sounds a lot more complicated. You know, when you're looking at all this, you say, wait a minute, it can't be 5 steps. It's not. It is. It's a lot more complicated than this. But this gives you the overall view of it. Ultimately, you need to get your mailboxes moved over to the new servers. Once those mailboxes are moved over, once you've moved over any public folders that you have, once you're confident that the system is up and running and everything's working properly and mail is flowing properly through the new system, whether it's 2010 or 2013, then you can start discontinuing legacy servers. That leads to one of the other questions that just came in. How do you safely remove stubborn Exchange 2003 remnants from AD after transitioning to 2010? That's a great question, actually. So sometimes it doesn't work exactly as planned. We say discontinue legacy servers, and you go to do that, and it says it can't discontinue the server because there are some traces or remnants still left in it, or perhaps you haven't removed all of your public folders and there's still pieces left in there. So that could be a problem. And you certainly don't want to just turn the thing off, you know, or start yanking things out, you know, or getting a hold of ADSI edit and starting to delete things. And I mean, that could be messy. So there is an actual clean way of doing this that's been outlined, and we're going to talk about that actually in the Microsoft Server Deployment Assistant. So if you look at the Microsoft Server Deployment Assistant, this actually was just released 2 weeks ago. The Deployment Assistant has been around for a while, and it's one of the best tools that the Microsoft Exchange team has ever come up with. Really love this tool. You can see the URL up at the top, but you can always just do a Deployment Assistant search through Google or Bing. And so you can see here there are 2 different assistants. There's one on the left-hand side for Exchange Server 2010 deployment and one on the right side. So let's go through the left side as far as what it can do. This Deployment Assistant helps you with upgrading from Exchange Server 2003, upgrading from Exchange Server 2007, or mixed environments. It also helps with a new installation. It also can help with hybrid deployments or cloud-based only deployments. So if you go to the Deployment Assistant and you click that left link right there, the Exchange Server 2010 Deployment Assistant, to make that move, here's what you're going to see next. All right, so this gives you 3 different options: on-premises only, hybrid, and cloud only. So in our case, being that you're looking to move from 2003 over, you're looking at the on-premises only right now. So you click that left button. And then it gives you these 4 options: upgrade from Exchange 2003, upgrade from Exchange 2007, upgrade from Exchange 2003 and 2007, and then new installation of Exchange 2010. That's a greenfield install. So being that our discussion today is really focused on going from 2003 to 2010 to 2013, you would click that first option, right? And then it asks you a few questions. Now, look at these questions. These are not rocket science questions. These are easy questions. Things like, can you move all users to Exchange 2010 at once? Why is that important? Well, it's important because if you can't, if you're going to have a period of time of coexistence Now, that coexistence time basically means you're going to have Exchange 2010 and 2003 running in the same environment at the same time. So that's why it's called coexistence. So if you're going to have this period of coexistence, then there's a different way that you have to set up your Exchange than if you were able to just install the Exchange 2010 server and just move all the mailboxes over and you're good to go. So depending on how you answer that question, the deployment assistant will respond with different answers as far as different steps for you to take. Other questions: are you planning to use public folders? Are you planning to deploy an edge transport server role? Are you planning to deploy a unified messaging server role? See, answering these questions is very easy to do. It should be very, easy to determine if you're going to do these roles or use public folders. But once you answer the questions and you click next, it very quickly provides you this incredible checklist. And this checklist, as you can see on the left, it shows you all of the different pieces to the deployment. Now, it looks like, wow, this is great. It's just going to tell me exactly how I do it. And you know what? That's exactly what it does. For example, notice configure a legacy host name. On the left-hand side, you select the feature that you need to complete. On the right-hand side, it gives you information about what is a legacy host name, and then it tells you exactly how to perform the steps. So it shows you step by step what you need to do. How awesome is that? So again, I think the Deployment Assistant is one of the best tools that Microsoft has ever really put out there, or the Exchange team has put out there, to really help us when it comes to our deployments. Now, what it doesn't do, it doesn't completely replace design, right? So there's still a lot to focus on when it comes to designing your Exchange environment. Knowing where to put your servers, how to put your servers, what kind of scale you're looking at in terms of mailbox servers and so forth. And there are other great tools provided by the Exchange team, members of the Exchange team, to help us when it comes to mailbox scaling, when it comes to putting stress on your systems, load gen, things like that. So this is one tool, but there are other tools that can assist as well. Now, for the person here who asked the question about safely removing stubborn Exchange 2003 remnants, you might note that it mentions here post-installation tasks down at the bottom. So after you follow through on all the different steps, moving data over, and notice it says move mailboxes, move public folder data. So once you're through with all of that, you go through the post-installation tasks, and that will help with the transition. Okay. There's a question here that just came in. What do you suggest companies who are on 2010, should they do the transition to 2013 or wait for the service pack for 2013 to be released? Okay, this is going to be, first of all, it's good for you to note that currently you can't transition at all. So it's not even a concern. However, the real question is what you're going to do once 2013 is ready, perhaps with a cumulative update. So you don't necessarily have to wait for a service pack. You want to wait for the cumulative update, and then it will be ready for 2010 transition over to 2013. So the question is, are the features in 2013 compelling enough to move you in that direction? For some companies, yes. For your company, well, that's up to you. We went over some of the main features. But I think a lot of folks, when I usually give this session and I talk about all the main features and things, even though as an Exchange guy I love it, but again, loving it doesn't mean that a company that comes to me and says, listen, we're putting our trust in you, we need to know right here and now, should we spend our money on this? That's a different story. And depending on the company, I'll give a different answer each time. So this is something that you have to decide. Do you have the budget for it? Is it worth spending that budget on the transition to 2013, or are there other solutions that you might want to put that money into that will help you? And then maybe wait and see what happens with Exchange 2015 or some other future version. So completely up to you. It's not really for me to say, and I'm not looking to dissuade anyone from 2013, but it's my job to, of course, be honest with you and just say that, look, the features, may be compelling or they may not be. It's not a no-brainer. It's not, oh man, you've got to go to this because it's the most awesome thing ever. It's not one of those types of things. My recommendation for most folks, if you're on 2003, go to 2010 and wait, because that's going to be such a huge change for you anyway in terms of what you're looking at. that you might wait for a little while and wait and see what happens with the next flavor of Exchange. So for those of you who really want to just keep moving forward and get to the latest and greatest right now, then fine, make the double hop. All right. Now, once we can do the transition to Exchange 2013, and for those of you folks who are still sending in questions, keep them coming. Once we're finished up with the discussion, I'm going to return and we're just going to go through questions. So not to worry, just keep the questions coming in. For those who are able to then make the move to Exchange 2013, you'll use the Exchange Server 2013 Deployment Assistant to help you as well. Now, what you'll note, I mean, here I'm telling you that Exchange Server 2013 is not ready, but maybe you don't believe me. Maybe you're thinking, maybe he's wrong. Well, okay, well, here's the Deployment Assistant. So if you click the 2013 Deployment Assistant, and you look and you say, okay, wow, this is the whole Metro look, right? So it's very different from the other one. It uses those square boxes. Why have three-dimensional graphics, when I have a $500 monitor that can show every color in the world? I certainly only want blue and white. That's awesome. I have 3D effects that could be shown, but instead I want it to be as flat as possible. Great. You can see where I stand on the home Metro interface. Nevertheless, this does look clean and crisp, and so I do like that. So you select on premises, and look what you get. You have one check mark. You have one radio button. New installation of Exchange 2013. What about upgrade? Coming soon. Upgrade from 2010? Coming soon. It's all coming soon. So, there you are. I'm not lying to you. You can't move to 2013. There is no second hop here. They're still building that. But you can move to 2010. So let's actually sum that up then. What stops your move to 2013 again? Well, with Exchange 2003, there's no upgrade path and no third-party solution yet. With Exchange 2007, you need RU8, which we don't have. Exchange 2010 requires SP3, which we have, but we don't have cumulative update 1. So that's what stops your move. What stops your move to 2010? Nothing. If you are on Exchange 2003, it's the smart move to make. Or I should say, you can also wait for Quest to create migration tools directly to 2013. As I said, I just talked with them. They are not close to a solution yet, but who knows? Any day they could have a breakthrough and be announcing their latest tool set, which will only cost your company $1 billion to purchase. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. I like Quest, and I love their tools. They make the best tools out there. But, again, they come at a price. So you have to ask yourself the question, are the features in 2013 so compelling that I have to double hop or have to migrate to 2013 right now? If the answer is yes, then make the move. Make the move. But of course you have to wait a little bit for these other issues. But if you have a green field, then go with it. Okay. So what has this webinar accomplished? Well, hopefully it's accomplished a few things. Obviously we didn't really dive deep and go into all the screenshots and demonstrations for what's new in Exchange 2013. We do a different webinar. Train Signal, we've done this webinar before. What's new in Exchange 2013? And if you want to see that, if you're interested in that webinar again, let Train Signal know. You want to see this What's New. They have it actually recorded and you can watch it. You can also pick up my Exchange 2013 administration series with Train Signal, and that we've covered pretty much every new feature and how it works, including high availability, unified messaging, how it works. That's more of an administration focus, not a certification focus, although some of the subject matter does coincide. But it's really into what Exchange 2013 is all about. So if you are going to deploy Exchange 2013 and you're going to be an administrator of it, I recommend that you watch that series. If you want to watch the What's New, just ask Train Signal and they'll let you watch that webinar as well. So this webinar specifically has just made you aware of the primary Exchange 2013 new features list. So it wasn't extensive. You notice there weren't like a billion things on that list. Obviously, we only made the main highlights for that list that we showed. But now you're aware. You also know now that there will be no upgrade path from 2003 to 2013. If you are on 2003, you know that you have to either double hop to 2013 or you have to wait for a migration solution from a third party. And you may have decided that 2013 is just not in your plans at this point, and 2010 is good enough. And that's not a bad decision. For many of you that are listening, that may not be a bad decision. In fact, for many of you listening, some ask me all the time when I'm in these discussions, they say, hey, do you think we still need an on-premise deployment of Exchange? And I ask them, how many people do you have? Do you have a small number of users, 25, 50 users? What's your needs for email? What are you doing with it? Why do you feel you need an on-premise deployment? And some say, well, I'm concerned about things like high availability. It's like, well, okay, great. Office 365 will give you the latest and greatest of Exchange, SharePoint, and Link, and you don't have to worry about backups and disaster recovery and high availability. They'll take care of all of that. So these are some of the things that, a lot of times I like to see what are people looking to do here with their email, because it may make sense to move to the cloud. It's a cost-effective solution. In that sense, it's compelling. It removes a lot of the stress off of the administrator. In that sense, it's compelling. And you get all of the benefits of these solutions, the latest and greatest, that Microsoft actually will continue to enhance and upgrade and fix, and you don't have to worry about that at all. So Office 365 may be your best solution for some of you that are listening right now. But if you're going to stick with on-premises, then 2010, you might just decide that that's where you're going to go, and that's where you're going to stay for a little bit. But whatever path you choose, you know that the deployment assistant is the smartest way to make it happen, because it makes sure that you don't forget anything. And you have all those step-by-step tasks right at your fingertips. You can print them out, and you can have them right there as a guide. So hopefully, all of this has been very clear. I can see that that we have a lot of questions to get to, so I'm going to start answering those. But just before I do that, if you want to contact me or read up on some of my blogs and so forth, I write for InfoWorld. There's my column for InfoWorld. You can email me at peter@trainsignal.com. Any questions you have, you're welcome to email me. That's one of the great things about TrainSignal, is that there's a real focus on helping people. That's really what our whole business is about, helping people. So if you have questions, we want to help you. And then you can also follow me on Twitter at JP I promise I don't tweet lots of personal things, what I'm doing. I'm taking a walk. I'm going to the store. I don't tweet foolish things. Typically, I tweet things about Exchange, so you might find that it's helpful. All right, so let's jump over here to the questions and see what else we have. So for existing 2010, is it better to do a clean install of Exchange 2013? That's a great question, actually, because really you can't do anything but. So if you're on 2003, maybe you haven't been keeping up with the deployment paths for Exchange, but ultimately there are no in-place upgrades of Exchange. So what that means is there's no way for you to just take your existing server and install Exchange right on top of it. The same is true with Exchange 2010. You can't just install Exchange 2013 on top of it. You have to spin up a new virtual machine or get a new physical box, and then you have to move your mailboxes over and then decommission the older system. So there's no way around that. You're not going to be able to do anything but a clean install. Now, for some, if your question, actually, I'm looking at this question differently, and I'm wondering if perhaps you meant something else. So what you might have meant, is it better to just scrap the whole thing and start new with Exchange 2013? Some have done that in terms of even with 2003. If you only have 20, 30 mailboxes on an Exchange server, you can always go to PST and scrap it and just start with a whole new brand new installation. You could do that. That's doable. Sometimes it's easier than anything else as far as migrations. So that's something to consider. Not from 2010 to 2013, but if you're working with 2003, that might be the way to go if you have a small environment. Let's see. Does Outlook Web App 2013 allow the offline email experience? It does. The way that works is through the browser. So you have to make sure you have the browser that allows that. I believe it has to allow HTML5 so that it can cache that content so that you can write emails offline. If a company is currently running in a 2003 and 2007 hybrid environment, would you recommend transitioning to 2007, then 2013? Oh, hey, that's a great question. Very good. Yes, if a company is running in a 2003 and 2007, you already have 2007 installed, I never thought of it that way, actually. I never thought of it that way. If you do have that mixed environment and you're still coexisting, I guess I always thought that if you had that mixed environment, you would eventually transition completely over to 2007. But yeah, if you're still running a 2003, 2007 hybrid environment, then that might be the better way to go. You can go right from 2007 to 2013. Now, I say that, but keep in mind, I still have not seen that work. We don't have RU8 for 2007, so I have no way of knowing if that's going to work smoothly, if you're going to love that experience or not. Either way, you're going to have to wait until we have some answers. Um, but yeah, that would certainly be a simpler move than going to 2010 first and then to 2013. You definitely want to just think about getting your systems off of 2003 at this point and moving forward. Are online moves still available with 2007 and 2010 to 2013? I'm going to say yes. So that's a good point. If you're moving from 2003, your mailboxes they have to do that while your end users are offline, right? So you're looking at weekends and nights. But with 2007 to 2010, you were able to do online moves, and so you're able to move the mailboxes while folks are working. And the only negative was that at some point they would receive a message saying they have to restart Outlook. So that's still, I'm going to say that that's still available. Again, being that we have no RU8 and no cumulative update, I haven't tested it. But yes, I'm going to say that online moves are still available. Do you see a future for Exchange Administrator, or will the cloud take that away? And if someone wants to move into Exchange, would you suggest that they learn 2010 or 2013? Those are good questions as well. So, do I see a future for Exchange Administrators? I would say I do see a future. I don't know how much into the future I see that. Do I believe there will be on-premise versions of Exchange for a long time to come? I do. I think that there's a lot of fear of the cloud. I think the cloud is overhyped as far as what it can do for us. At the same time, I think that Office 365 is an excellent solution, and I think that one of the reasons why folks aren't going to it is because you have these companies that are relying on Exchange admins to handle their little, 30-person companies. There's all these consultants, and they ask the Exchange admin, hey, should we, this IT admin who's their consultant, and they say, hey, should we move to Office 365? And of course the consultant goes, no, of course not, because that's going to affect their business. So that's sort of a crummy way to do business, to be honest with you. Your job as an IT admin is to facilitate, but I think we get lazy. So instead of trying to learn the latest and greatest, instead of finding ways to automate tasks and finding ways to do things better, learning system center tools and so forth, instead what we do is we keep our clients from moving forward because that's going to be bad for business. Don't do that. This is the field you chose. It's a field that constantly changes. It's not like other fields where it's the same thing. You can do, my father was a butcher. He went to work for 30 years, and every day it was the same thing. You don't cut meat differently. It's the same. He was very good at it, and he didn't have to learn something new every day, and that's what he liked. But we've chosen a different field. We've chosen a field that changes daily. Every day something new is being invented and created and changed and tweaked and broken, and it's our job to fix it and deploy it and get it out there. So I do see a future for Exchange administrators, but I see a better future, a brighter future for Exchange / SharePoint / System Center / server expert administrators. So in other words, diversify. I see a better future for jack of all trade, virtualization administrators that can do it all. So how do you do that? I mean, what do you do? Well, guess what? It's a pitch for training. I think that training is the key. And I think you know that already. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting in on this webinar. So training is the key. You need to be knowledgeable in a ton of different subjects in order to survive in the futuristic world that's coming our way. And you need to, if you really want to survive in it, you're going to need to be better than the next person. You're going to need to know how to automate as opposed to just be a button pusher. I mean, think about it. I installed a very advanced solution the other day by UB Tech. It's U-B Tech, and it's their Exchange Tasks 365 solution. It allows me to do a connection for recipient management. Get this is really awesome. It allows me to do recipient management between an on-premise Exchange environment and an Office 365 environment. I installed the tool expecting it not to work at all. It installed with next finish, literally. I think it was only 2 nexts and 1 finish, and it was installed. In a matter of 10 minutes, I was connected to both my on-premise and my Office 365. It's one of the easiest solutions I've ever seen. Well, think about it. If solutions are becoming that easy, how long are they going to need a master Exchange administrator to handle them? Or will it just be that easy for anyone to do, right? So yes, I think there is a future for Exchange administrators, but I would recommend that you diversify and learn as much as possible about everything. As far as what I would suggest you learn, I guess it depends. If you're starting from square one, then I always say go to the latest, go to 2013. That's where your future is going to be. But if you're looking to start with a stable platform that'll get you work today, then learn 2010. All right, I spent a long time on that question. Sorry about that. Let's see, is RPC traffic an issue with the Exchange 2013? So there's a change in architecture when it comes to RPC traffic. RPC is still used, but it's not used externally. So it's used internally on the server between the transport service and between the mailbox transport service and the backend databases. That's a long discussion. But if you do some research on what's new in Exchange 2013 on TechNet, you can look up RPC and you'll see how they've made some changes to RPC. So I would say no, it's not an issue with Exchange 2013 at all. Virtualizing Exchange 2013, is there any documentation on that? So the last time Microsoft really updated their support policy was June of 2012. That was before Server 2012. That was before Exchange 2013, a lot of other changes. So we're hoping to see some new Exchange virtualization documentation. There is a specific site, TechNet site on virtualizing Exchange 2013 you can look for, and it will give you some information, but it's not complete. So we're still waiting. Basically, you know, it's the same as virtualizing anything else, virtualizing Exchange 2010 at this point. We are on 2003. Any preference on an over-the-top or new green install? Good question. It really depends on the number of users we're talking, and you know, the amount of time it would take to do a new install. It also depends on what else you have deployed in your environment, what servers are you running, and so forth. A lot of questions. For something like that, why don't you email me privately? You can still see my email up on the screen, peter@trainsignal.com, and let's talk about it. Let's see what you really got. Let's see. Okay, there's a question about a script that I can recommend for OST to PST. At this time, I don't have anything in my bag of magic tricks there to offer. Let me give that some thought. Email me and I'll see what I can come up with. I'll ask the Exchange team what they think. What minimum version AD schema is required? As far as numerics for that, I don't know. Ultimately, Exchange 2013, you know, it currently works, I believe, with Server 2008 R2 and Server 2012. Does it go back to 2008? I'm not sure. I'd have to check the prerequisites. Will Outlook 2003 coexist with 2010? Good question. I believe it will. I'd have to look it up, though. It's those are things that are not in my head. I'd have to just look it up. Am I able to install Exchange 2010 on Server 2012? Good question. 2-3 weeks ago, I would have said no. But with Service Pack 3 for Exchange 2010, that's one of the reasons for the Service Pack, and so the answer is yes. You need Service Pack 3 for Exchange 2010, and then you can install it on Server 2012. I guess my question is, why would you do that? What's holding you back from installing it on 2008 R2? Is there a special need to go with Server 2012? Something exciting that I'm not aware of. What is Greenfield? Good question. So a Greenfield deployment basically just means, it's just a fancy word like cloud, right? Everybody uses cloud. Well, my newest fancy word is Greenfield. You know, basically just means it's a fresh, brand spanking new installation of Exchange in an environment that never had Exchange before. So you've set up your servers, you've got Active Directory, it's all brand new, and you install Exchange. That's Greenfield. Can you do a cross-forest migration to Exchange 2013 from what sources? Good question. Right now we're so limited. You know, I don't know. I don't know what is available just yet. I would say wait in terms of what you can do. You know, I've actually been telling folks, and I don't know if how the Exchange team would feel about this. I've just been saying, consider Exchange 2013 more like a beta or release candidate, you know, release, not a release for GA, for general availability. Um, until we get that cumulative update, until we can see how it performs in larger environments, until we can see what happens when you try to transition over to it, it's kind of hard to just, give information without seeing it for yourself as far as does it work. So, I wouldn't do too much with Exchange 2013 other than deploy it in a lab environment. Um, Even the greenfield deployment, I mean, you could, if you're adventurous, if you're excited about it and you want to try it, great. But I would stick to lab environments for a little bit longer. Um, does Microsoft have a published guide of their deployment the way they had done for 2010? That's a good question. I haven't seen that, and I don't know. I haven't heard that Microsoft is running 2013 in-house. As I said, there is no transition to it, so how would Microsoft get their own servers from 2010 to 2013? Although probably, there's probably beta versions of the server, of the cumulative update and so forth, so they may be running it. I have no idea. I'd have to ask them. Uh, would you recommend doing a separate AD domain to help assist in transitioning to 2013? No, not necessarily. I guess it depends on your setup. Um, I would email me and tell me what your setup is between us, and we'll see what you're working with. What about certificates requirements if the company wants to coexist with 2010 and 2013? Um, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem actually as far as certificate requirements. Again, we'll have to wait and see what the plan is, and then I would recommend using the deployment assistant to work you through the certs part. Okay, can a good idea be to use an IMAP sync tool to migrate only the data from 2003 to 2013? That might work. That is a good idea. But again, there are a lot of different ideas in terms of, see, notice the difference in terminology though. When you're talking about transitioning, you're talking about keeping some of the configuration and so forth. But when you're talking about moving the data itself but none of the configuration, that's more of a migration. So migrations are where you're looking at for 2003 to 2013. So that might work. Okay. Last couple of questions. Wow, we're up to 25 questions. I have two more. I'm going to answer these to the best of my ability, and then we're going to call it a day. So what is better for an enterprise, on-premise or cloud exchange? Depends on the size of the enterprise. I mean, enterprise can mean any number of different things. But you're probably referring to large organization, right? So yes, I know that when it comes to larger organizations, it's typically better to do on-premise. You have more control, and that's always good. But I think that cloud exchange is becoming better and better for larger environments. So stay tuned on that. What may be the answer today may not be the answer tomorrow. I think that with an enterprise, Microsoft is typically recommending a mixture of the two. Go with both because there's advantages to cloud-based email. For example, even for things like you have temps or you have, individuals that maybe you could throw them into a cloud-based solution and not have to worry about them, but maybe for your VPs and others, you want to have hands-on control for security purposes and so forth. It really just depends. But you can do a hybrid deployment and try out the cloud-based version and see for yourself whether or not you want to go all in or keep things kind of hybrid where you keep it on-premise and utilize cloud services for those that need it. The last one, can you explain auto-discovery DNS records? I'm out of time. I'd love to, but I'm out of time. It's a good question. Email me that question privately, and we'll certainly discuss that one-on-one. And certainly, if you get a chance to view any of my training, I'm sure you'll enjoy it because we go into all of this, whether it's Exchange 2013 or 2010. I'm going to go up to our last slide here, and I'm going to let Dana take things over at this point and close it out for us.
Thank you, Peter. That's all the time we have today. Thanks again for attending and for your participation. If you have comments or feedback, you can email us at webinars@trainsignal.com.